Good morning to everybody. Good evening. This is the Ghost Songwriter here, and I'm your host, Patrick Michael Karnahan. I'm a member of the Black Irish Band, and the Ghost Songwriter podcast. This would be officially number 3. Talking about the channeling I get from out there beyond spirits. For subject matter of a lot of my material, and most of it is historical nature, some personal. Today's topic will be the last flight of 123. This song I wrote, I'm trying to remember, I think it was in 2000, I want to say 2006. The story though, however, the subject matter took place on July 18th, 2002 in Colorado. The connection I have with this song, Last Flight of 123, is my title, is the actual aircraft. The aircraft was a PB-4Y, and it was a World War II aircraft that was used by the Navy in the later part of World War II. They used them over the Pacific theater as sub chasers. And anyways, my connection with the aircraft has to do with me being a wildland firefighter. Out of high school, I got a job working with the Young Adult Conservation Corps. I found out my life was going nowhere. I was involved with a bad group of people, drinking a lot, partying too much. Definitely wasn't going to be college material. So I think the thing that saved my soul the most was I got a job working outdoors. And so I learned how to operate a chainsaw, and then I was working on a fuel break project for months and months and months. Then the following year, I was picked up by the U.S. Forest Service at the lowest entry level you could, and it's there where I learned to become a wildland firefighter. And on my my first fire, this was back in 1979, this dates me a little bit, I was on the Will Fire, and I was operating chainsaw, and I remember the second day, I was kind of fascinated by the aircraft that they were flying. And there was an old B-17, an old bomber from World War II that had come dropped on the fire. And I thought that was kind of neat. I was very aware of the World War II aircraft. My father was a flyer during World War II, George Francis Carnahan. Flew in B-24s out of Europe. So of course I have all those stories of my dad about the different kinds of aircraft. And we did talk about this particular aircraft. It's similar to a B-24, but it has a single tail. That's what makes the difference. The B-24 had 2 tails. The PB-4Y had the single tail. Other than that, they look similar. The wings were a little different on them. And as I said before, they were used in the later part of the war and used as sub chasers. A lot of these old World War II aircraft, of course, after the war, they were surplus. A lot of them were scrapped. A lot of them taken to Arizona for the scrap line. And some of them survived, and they converted them to use them as fire drop planes. First they were using borate, they used water, now they use Phos-Chek. And back in their day, they were quite the savior on a lot of these fires. Aircraft like this would be used at the head of the fire, where you wouldn't want to put fire crews because of the rate of spread of the actual fire. Aircraft really good for kind of knocking down the head. It's not just aircraft that puts out a wildland fire. It takes a lot of effort. Dozer crews, firemen on the ground, trucks, water, hand crews, hot shots. Air tankers, though, are a great tool. And I think it was the 1950s they started developing an air tanker program using aircraft for actually fighting fire. And of course, today in the news you hear about the big air tanker 10. Of course, there was the 747 of years, but back a while ago, these were pretty much very popular on the fire line. Again, this is a PB-4Y, subject of our song today. This is actually my artwork. So that first year fighting wildfire in '79, we had an air tanker base up in Chester, California. And I remember driving by there, and there on the tarmac, there was this air tanker, all shiny, Tanker 123. So I'd go out there and I took pictures of it. Thought it was really neat. And then it saddened me years later to hear on the news that Air Tanker 123 had gone down in Colorado. And it bothered me a lot because a couple years prior to the air tanker crash, the Black Irish Band was touring in Montana and Wyoming. And I told Rick from the band, Rick Restiva, I said, hey, I want to stop by that air tanker base in Gray Bowl, Wyoming, and I want to take a look and see if air tanker 123 is there. And sure enough, along with the old airplanes, there it was. And I went up to it, took the pictures, and then I used the photographs. You know, I figured down the line I'd probably do a oil painting because I'm an oil painter and I'm fascinated by wildland firefighting as a subject to art, as well being a firefighter. And I never got around to it, but I took those pictures. And then after I heard about the tragic accident of 2002, it was a year later, I did an oil painting of it, the subject matter. And then further down the road, I was sitting at my dinner table one night, and I had the guitar in hand and a piece of paper, and the song came to me. I don't know, there it was. I'd done the painting, I knew about the aircraft, there was the song, so it was spirit channeled to me. Pilot, co-pilot was Milt Stolick and Ricky Schwartz. And I know Milt the pilot, who died in the crash, was a big fan of Jimmy Buffett. And I had heard a rumor that he was actually asked by Jimmy Buffett to possibly fly his Coral Reefer band around, and he was thinking about it, I think, just before the tragic accident. So there I was, the song was channeled to me, and I knew the storyline of what happened that day, and I put it together. And as the ghost songwriter, that's what I'm here to do, is to teach a little bit about songwriting stories. Of course, with the passing of Gordon Lightfoot, a lot of us are talking about one of his probably most famous hits, besides Sundown, which is the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which is a story song based on real people, real events, and real tragedy. And also, when you write a song, you've got to be careful. There's still family members out there, and you want to present the story as true as you can, as not to offend or misconstrue the facts. There's a lot of songwriters who have written historical songs, and they've changed the words later as more evidence is brought forward about the accident, tragedy. So for this song, I wanted to tell a story. I tell it in 3 verses with a repetitive chorus. I think we'll go through the song and then I'll talk a little bit about how I chose to record it. This is called The Last Flight of 123. It just comes in with the introduction with the chords. I'm going to do it in the key of C. It was originally chorded in chorded out in the key of D because Steve MacArthur of the band sang the song. So it goes from C to F to D minor to G, back to C. Now A minor, F to D minor, then G. And the song picks up there. That's pretty much it. Folk songs don't have to be complicated, they have to tell a story. Most folk songs are based 2 to 3 chords. This one has a few more. That's the chord structure. Now let's talk about the words to the song. So I chose 3 verses to tell the story with repetitive chorus. So let's talk about the chorus. It's important. Here's the last flight of 123. The bravest of flyers, their spirits be free. Down from the battle they'll fight nevermore. Up with the angels and heaven will soar. Tells you pretty much the aftermath of what the verses are going to tell you. That these are true heroes, both Milt and Ricky. They gave their life and passion for fighting wildland fire, and they've died in the service. And I'd like to believe they're angels in heaven now guarding all the other firefighters that are out there, especially those up in the sky. So I'd like to dedicate this song to both Milt and Ricky on the song. So now let's go to the verse. Tell the story. In Broomfield, Colorado, the summer '02, the Big Elk was burning, they knew what to do. They fired up their engines and taxied the line with 2,000 gallons and a promise of time. and then you add the chorus. So that tells you about the aircraft, sets up the story. Now why are they there? Called up for service to put out the blaze, lasting for hours, flying 7 that day. They joined the air tankers and waited their drop. With weather so perfect, no way could they stop. Let's just throw the chorus in there. Hear the last flight of 123, bravest of flyers, their spirits be free. Down from the battle to fight nevermore, up with the angels and heaven will soar. Now the last verse. This is where it all unfortunately comes to the end of the story. So you figure, how am I going to tell the story, how it ends? A little bit of truth in this. They flew in the downwind Big Valley for the curve, reaching the final, not saying a word. Once at the drop zone, their left wing gave way, taking 123 forever that day. Heard the last flight of 123, the bravest of flyers, their spirits be free. Down from the battle they'll fight nevermore, up with the angels and heaven will soar. And there you have it. 3 verses tells the story. And of course the rest of the story was the left wing fell off the plane. It was an older plane. It was built back in the 1940s. Structurally, the plane had a lot of difficulties, and both pilot and co-pilot had complained, but they kept these planes in service. I'm sure you've heard these stories about old steamships too, and sailing ships kept in service for too long. And unfortunately, the structural failure of the airframe was significant, and it caused the plane to crash. There was no way that the pilot or co-pilot could have changed the destiny once that plane left wing came off and it just goes in the ground. That's all I'm going to say about that. And but it's out there for us to honor those heroes and all the heroes, men and women that fly these air tankers, that fight these wildland fires we have out there. A little story about the recording. I hope that you'll look up the video, music video of the song. Steve is singing lead on it, and it is in the key of D. And we have footage actually of Air Tanker 123, so it's worth watching. And how did I record it? Well, that's interesting. I approached the song to me like it was World War I, and there's all these American pilots. They've come back from a mission, and they've lost 2 pilots. And they're sitting around, they have the piano, they're drinking a little whiskey, probably a little champagne, and they're toasting their fellow pilots who had passed on that day and didn't return from over the trenches. So in the melody, I wrote it with the melodeon, which is my accordion, the old-fashioned accordion, and then I had played guitar, and that I did not use bass on this song. I used the bass notes on the melodeon, and then my friend Dave Rainwater came in and he played it's kind of a banjo mandolin, and he played it and it gave it a really old, like 1900s, 1918 World War I feel. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to take it back in time. And that's why the first lyric goes, you know, the summer of '02. Because now, you know, when we think of '02, '09, we're always thinking about, you know, 1902 and all that. But actually, the song takes place on the crash date, which is July 18th, 2002. So it has that old-timey feel, and that's the way I wanted it to be. And so it was channeled to me, the Ghost songwriter, from probably Milt and Ricky, and that's who it's dedicated to. So I hope you enjoyed this little look at an original song I wrote, The Last Flight of 123. And I'm the Ghost songwriter, and this is our podcast number 3. And if you like this information about these songs, about where they came from, the spirits that are out there, please like, subscribe, give me your comments. Maybe you know some personal stories about the pilot, co-pilot, like to know a little more information about the aircraft. True heroes, you know, out flying a regular day's mission, you know, doing what they could, and didn't return home that night. So we'll see you later, and remember, last flight of 123. July 18th rolls around. I'm going to look at that artwork one more time. I even put it on a t-shirt. So thanks for joining me, the Ghost Songwriter. And we'll be back next time. Hopefully get these out at least once a week.